This is a quick video on building a CI or build process with MLflow. Now the motivation, I don't know MLflow. I'm finally trying to learn it. Yesterday I set up a very basic pipeline and my idea was, hey, let me build a really simple ML pipeline, try to track my experiments so that I could possibly report on this and share this with someone else. Like, hey colleague, here's the inputs I used, here are the models that they produced, and then here are the results for those models. You can see this. And I did that with some CSV files and some really ugly code. And at the end of that, looking at the MLflow tracking API, or just looking at this little web app they surface for you that shows you, here's your experiment, here are your inputs, here are your metrics, here's the model. Like, oh, this was starting to become intuitive for me. So I want to do the same thing with a build process, because at the moment, the way I'm running this code is Python execute my script, passing in via the command line actual configuration or arguments. What I'd like to do is have something that's a bit more of, I set some configuration files and I say, hey, MLflow, run this thing, or Python, run this thing, not an explicit script where I need someone to either edit code or edit the actual run file. So how might we do this? Well, in my case, I've already got code in GitHub, and I would probably use a CI/CD server like a Jenkins or Travis CI, or maybe even, well, in my case, not maybe even, explicitly, I'm going to use GitHub Actions here. And so in GitHub Actions, what I want to do is I want to set up or forget GitHub Actions. What I want to do is set up some sort of process that's going to automatically build my project. So grab all my source code, install my dependencies, and run one of these workflows, like train my model and grab the metrics, and show me the results. And if it passes, then we'll check our code, and if it doesn't, we will fail. Now, in my case, I set this up with GitHub Actions, and you can see as we dive into the workflow, here's the little result. These are the actual model metrics. So like this script ran, and I did it with a really kind of, I would say this is a basic usage file. Oh, here's the file, where I'm saying like, oh, I've got to define, this was up to me to define a requirements txt file like scikit-learn, MLflow, pandas, and then say, hey, go ahead and run my script. This is pretty janky. I'm still running a Python script. I would have to then pass in the configure, like the actual parameters. What are the hyperparameters I want to use? A bunch of other things. So how does MLflow actually solve for this? Well, one way, or kind of the top level of this approach, is something called a project. So I've got a YAML file I can define with my inputs or with my hyperparameters, other configuration. I put it in one place. This will make the diffs a lot cleaner when we check stuff in, because it's really easy to see exactly what's changed. They use Conda as a standard for packaging. So now when I come back over to VS Code, and we'll run this directly from the command line, instead of saying Python, run my script, here are some command line arguments, I can say MLflow, run this project, and I've defined my inputs in the config. And I can start to change that. I can when I make updates there and you make updates, it's a lot easier to see the changes in the config file versus us going in and editing the code itself. So I have a ton more to learn, of course, but just in this next layer of exploration, first was tracking, second is some sort of like build or sharing the project. How do we share these projects? There's this ML projects concept. Pretty cool so far. Excited to learn more.